So, coming out of jail, I'm almost grateful for the experience, as hellish as the environment was.
As hellish as the environment was, you were grateful for it.
If you want a guaranteed way to get in touch with me, maybe you have a business idea, maybe you want some fashion tips, maybe you just want to connect, you could find me on Minect.
So first glance, those two clips may seem strangely juxtaposed. They're actually from the same interview clip that I took off YouTube, and it featured Tristan Tate, who along with his brother Andrew has just been charged in Romania. There's actually been indicted, and the judge is now going to look at whether their charges have legal basis or not, and it is pretty damn serious what they are accused of. So it might seem rather odd that he is giving this kind of interview in the first place and then having this slightly strange ad at the end where you can go and ask him for fashion advice. What the hell is going on? So in today's video, it's going to be a cracker. I'm going to use my legal background to explain where we are in relation to the charge sheet, and I think we can more or less call what is likely to happen over the coming months and maybe even years in this legal case. And at the very end of the video, I'm going to be explaining why I am wearing this particular t-shirt, how it is actually pertinent to the case. So let's go, let's get into the video. And by the way, greetings from Odessa, Ukraine. Поехали!
SAR Experience.
So I'm a former EU lawyer who's been living on and off in this region for more or less a decade. And I'm known as the insider by my clients because not only do I have a background at the best grad school in the world for international relations with a specialization in this region, I also speak Romanian, Russian, Ukrainian, and some other languages. Plus, as I said, I'm a former lawyer. Plus, I've actually met up with the Tates briefly once. So I've been following their content. Unlike most people who comment on the Tates legal trial, I've actually been aware of the content for about, well, at least 4 years, if not 5 years already. So I think I'm in a very good position to cast my discerning eye over the proceedings in the courts in Bucharest. So first, let's take a really quick run through the charges that have been sent by indictment to the judge for review at the moment. He or she has 60 days to respond. And amongst them are, as you're probably aware, accusations of rape, human trafficking, constituting an organized criminal group, as well as illegal access to a computer system, alteration of computer data, assault and battery, and other violence. So what's interesting also, when I took a look at the Diacot website, that's the branch of the Romanian legal system that deals with organized crime and terrorism, also going to be trafficking allegations that extend to countries in addition to Romania, including the US and the UK. So there's actually the possibility of further legal proceedings in the UK and the US, it looks like. The police alleged that the Loverboy method was used to lure the alleged victims to Romania. I have a separate video about that. If you're really interested in understanding the Loverboy method and why the Tates are in so much trouble, link it up above in a card down below in the description. Alleged criminal behavior includes publishing compromising images of the alleged victims, presumably to force them to continue to make pornographic content here. Violence was used in the coercion to compel victims to continue to produce pornographic content, so allegations of using violence to force them to make the content, presumably for the webcam business or for your OnlyFans or something like that. For now, there are no charges of money laundering or trafficking of minors, although the fact that it's mentioned here means that possibly there's going to be further charges in Romania with respect to those. And they seized a lot of money and property from the Tates, basically about, if we take the crypto with the cash, is like about $500,000 US. Also, you have 15 cars, 14 luxury watches, and 15 properties. So probably that's running into a few million. I saw estimates putting that around $10 million. Not sure if that's accurate or not, but it's definitely going to be a few million in seized assets in Romania. And of course, the Tates probably have assets outside of Romania as well. So not sure if there's going to be an attempt to some shape or form in the future seize those assets as well. So at the moment, the Tates are still under house arrest, and they have two accomplices, alleged accomplices, who are Romanian, who are also being detained. And what can we say about these charges with respect to what we already know? Well, the Tates have been on record many times discussing how they had similar issues in the United Kingdom. Andrew Tate infamously once quipped that 40% of the reason why he left the UK and emigrated to Romania was to avoid such allegations. Now, of course, he denies that they were true, they were founded, but we see this pattern repeating itself. Also, as I point out in many videos on my channel, the Tates keep self-snitching. They keep talking about, I've been watching their content for, at least 4 years. They've continuously boasted about committing what seems to be illegal activity, and a lot of it matches up with what they are now accused of. The Loverboy method, they've also sold a training course for guys who want to run a webcam business, or I guess OnlyFans as well, where they advocate using the Loverboy method in order to lure women into the online sex business to produce pornographic content. They also, in that training course, advocated things like tax evasion, stealing money from the girls, your employees, and several other, seemingly illegal acts. So basically, except for the rape, more or less, the charges match with a lot of the previous statements made by the Tates themselves, and with the previous allegations that they fled basically by emigrating to Romania. So as far as I know, the Tates never boast about raping anyone, but besides that, everything else matches up, and there's a lot of additional evidence there cited in the press release in terms of coercion, blackmail, in terms of forcing girls to continue to make pornographic content. So we also know from some of the leaked documents that there are conversations indicating that they lured the alleged victims to Romania on promises of a serious relationship, marriage, whatever. And yeah, basically, if you do that and your real intention is to get them to work for you in the online sex business, then there's definitely a strong argument that that will fall under human trafficking because you lured them. That's before we get into the other stuff like blackmailing or using physical violence, what I think lay people would more normally understand as being human trafficking, as opposed to just, basically lying to them to get them on a plane. But again, that's for the court to decide in due course. So in the media, the Tates and their supporters have circulated many defenses, I would frame as excuses, but some of them that are the most common are that it's the Matrix that's persecuting the Tate brothers because they told young men to do push-ups. No. There has been a pattern of behavior by the Tates over the last 4 or 5 years that matches with the majority of the charges. So I'm not buying, there's no evidence that it's some deep state plot. And actually the Matrix was something that was used in the Manosphere by Rich Cooper to describe kind of unplugging from societal norms. And then Tate ran with this actually quite late on in his YouTube career or social media career, and suddenly he switched from trying to pretend to being a James Bond-esque character to using this metaphor of the Matrix from the film to say that it's basically a deep state plot to control people by not making them wake up, and I don't know if it involves overthrowing the government or something, but it's a little bit more than doing push-ups, what he's been advocating to young men if you go back in time. So the second kind of excuse here, as you saw there, is that the Tates just have so many women that why would they ever need to rape anyone? I'm not sure about the correlation between people who commit rape and being a virgin maybe there's some correlation, but I doubt that just by meaning you're not a virgin means that you're not a potential rapist at all. And as you see, it's going to come to a shock for a lot of Tate's acolytes, but a lot of women don't like Tate.
Let's be real here. You don't think many women like Andrew Tate. Why do you say that?
I mean, we've all seen the videos and stuff, which I will say things get taken out of context, but he's also just like a misogynistic asshole. I mean, do you not agree to an extent?
This is your opinion.
I want to.
It's not like all the women of the world are throwing themselves at Tate, so he just gets every woman he wants. I know he loves to paint that kind of image, but for example, I did meet with him briefly at a party in a club here in Odessa in the summer of 2021, and believe me, it was not chock-a-block with hotties at all. In fact, there were very few, and I was invited actually to second night to his table at another club with his group of friends from the War Room, the kind of social group he was running at the time. And there's a distinct dearth of pretty ladies with them, the Tates, or with their whole cohort in general. And in fact, they made a video afterwards showing that the girls that they brought home with them in Odessa tried to rob them.
The girls you had on the couch here tried to rob me. Yeah, the 3 girls I had last night tried to rob us, basically.
So it's a little bit lame in general. The Tates, at the end of the first night, they ordered 54 bottles of champagne that almost no one drank. And yeah, it just wasn't the table. It wasn't that the Tates were particularly actually obnoxious or unpleasant or anything like that. It's just like, it's just mediocre, right? And especially for someone like me who is used to partying with super beautiful women, it was, yeah, very underwhelming indeed. So don't fall into the trap of thinking, like a lot of young men do, that women are chased, you know, the Tates are desired by women across the world, just all women. Here in Eastern Europe, they did extremely poorly. And there's lots of other videos that they made indicating that they basically failed with chicks here in Ukraine. So yeah, not buying that as an excuse for it. They couldn't rape anyone. Then you have the other one that they're so wealthy. Why would they start trafficking women? Well, let's listen to what Andrew Tate said himself about how he came up with the genius idea of running, of luring women to London to work for him in the online sex business.
So I owed some money to some dangerous people. We won't tell that story, but I needed money fast. And I had 70 grand, I needed 100 to stay alive. And I wasn't fighting for a while. That was the time, it was the only way I was making money. So I thought, you know what? I'm sitting there. I had 70 grand cash in my house. I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes, Tate, God just loves you and you just get lucky. You're going to go to the casino and you're going to make the 30. So I told Tristan my plan. And he's like, bro, what if you don't do it? It's like, bro, if I don't do it, we're fucked anyway. Like, they're going to get us eventually. We're going to end up dead. So I took 20 of the money, went to the casino, and lost it all. So the only answer is I got to bring them all to me, and I got to be in charge. So I flew all 5 chicks in. None of them knew about each other. Nothing. Thank you. Sat down at a nice restaurant. Me, Tristan. He flew 2. I flew 5, 7 girls. So look, about to get rich. This is my plan.
Basically, it was because he was a brokey in his own words, and they owed money to some nefarious characters and he needed it quickly. So again, doesn't, you know, hold up as an excuse. This is a very, very weak excuse. And obviously if they use this in court, they're gonna look very, very silly.
I'm gonna do this. I put a spin on it, of course. Big boss, big G, got big opportunity. This money's been invested. I've always wanted you to live with me. Now's your chance. You can leave Paris. You can leave Croatia. You can leave whatever. You come live in London with me. You're going to do this. You're going to be rich. I'm going to be rich, blah, blah, blah.
If they try to say, hey, we can't be rapists because all women love us, not going to work. So, and definitely, since he's on camera boasting about how he basically lured all these women to another country on false pretenses and, you know, spun everything, as he said. Again, this video where he describes like 10 minutes long where he boasts about it. So yeah, not very convincing as defenses for the Tates. So in sum, there's lots of corroborating evidence for these charges. They do have the presumption of innocence until they're proven guilty in the courts. That's basically what Andrew Tate seems to be clinging onto at the moment. So basically under house arrest, and as I alluded to in the last reaction video, which was about the BBC interview that Andrew Tate gave, that was a complete train wreck and just incriminated himself further with his answers overall, he decided it'd be very smart, after getting formally charged, to make the following video.
I just wanted to have an informal conversation. I was going to put a suit on and do this formally, but I think it's better if I do this informally.
So yes, that is Andrew Tate, shirtless, looking, I would say, with the lighting a little bit menacing. He's showing up his muscles. Who thinks this is already a good start to a video for a guy who is who's been charged or has been indicted with charges for human trafficking, violence against women, and rape, whether he's guilty or not. This is a terrible look. And then it gets even worse. Let's roll just a few seconds because this is very long video.
Going to do a comparison, right, between how they will treat Philip Schofield, who is confirmed as a groomer, who is admitting he has committed sexual crimes, and how they'll treat me, a man with no convictions.
Yes, he does juxtapose himself then with another alleged sex offender in the UK who he says has been grooming children and is guilty and all this kind of stuff. And then he complains that basically the mainstream media in the UK treats this guy with kid gloves and they don't treat him with kid gloves. Again, what is this as a legal system? Why is he comparing himself to another alleged sex offender and making the main gripe about the way the media treats him? And then ironically, as we're going to get into now, you're going to see a little bit of method to the madness, because then he's treated with kid gloves by the alt media and every other podcaster who'll have him on, basically, it seems. So as I said in the last video, normally a lawyer is going to recommend to their client in this kind of case to just stay stum, don't talk to the media, don't say anything in public, because the prosecution can just go through all your content that you're now making, just pick out unflattering parts or, you know, just elements of maybe you make a, like he made this interview for almost 5 hours with Patrick Bet-David on Valuetainment, and Tristan Tate made another one as well. And like, how can you go through a 5-hour interview and not say anything compromising? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, why would you compromise yourself or risk compromising yourself? Well, there is, as I said, method to the madness, and that is they are focused almost exclusively on, in my opinion, on not winning the legal case or putting themselves in a good position to prove their innocence in court. They are actually just focused entirely on brand building and monetizing their notoriety because, as we'll see, not only do they give interviews with these guys from Valuetainment, also Adam Susnick, not just Patrick Bet-David.
I want to ask you one more question regarding human trafficking, because this is a heinous charge, or
Absolutely.
allegedly.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is not lightweight stuff.
These guys are advocating on their behalf to their audiences.
The evidence is certainly very weak. They've been held 6 months with no charges. Finally, they formalized charges today. In my opinion, this is just a complete shakedown. This is a matrix, politically motivated attack. Why? Because they probably have hundreds of millions of dollars that they've accumulated in wealth, whatever the number is, cars, vehicles, the house, the compound, assets, crypto, all seized. And at the end of the day, I asked Tate, I said, what do you think is going to happen here? Because he put out a tweet basically asking the audience, what do you think is going to happen to me? Are they going to just drop the charges? Are they going to formalize charges? Are they going to basically save face and try to incriminate me with a lesser charge? At the end of the day, he said this is a shakedown. They're going to charge me with something, because you can't lock someone up in prison for 6 months.
So claiming that it's all a shakedown by the Romanian authorities when you've been making these statements. First of all, you emigrated to Romania saying that you were trying to escape allegations of a similar sort, and then, wow, quelle surprise, they reappear in Romania when you've been boasting about running something similar and selling a training course, teaching guys to do something that's, you know, been alleged. But I think it goes to the mindset of both of Adam Susnick here. I mean, he's just blindly just repeating whatever the Tates claim as fact, because he has a vested interest in promoting the Tates. You see the number of views on their videos are just insane. Like, I think they have 12 million on one of them from just a week ago. That's been made since the Tates were put under house arrest, as opposed to being detained in the actual Romanian prison, where they were not housed with the general prison population, to be clear. That's also important for when we come to our conclusions in this video. So they are obviously, from just the advertising revenue, you're going to make a lot of money from that. It's going to increase your popularity. because they can tap into that hysteria around the Tate cult, because that's basically what it is. It's an irrational cult at this stage, just believing that, oh, it must be the Romanian government and the Matrix coming after them, when the Tates have been boasting about most of this activity. And there you see that he says that they're friends. Well, I would describe it as friends with benefits, because these guys appear to be business buddies. Let's remember at the beginning of this video, I rolled part of a clip where Tristan Tate was advertising and promoting an app by which you can speak to him. Let's go and take a look at the website of the app. Also, here's Andrew Tate at the end of this video, of a video of Valuetainment, promoting the same app.
Minect is an application which allows you to take a minute to connect with influencers from all around the world. My name is Andrew Tate, and I'm available to speak directly to you on Minect.
Oh, and whose faces are there in Minix? It happens to be Patrick Bet-David and Adam Sosnick. Oh, and who happens, it appears that it is owned by Patrick Bet-David. So basically these guys have a business arrangement, right? So, and this makes sense from the brand building, as I said, monetization point of view. And you know, my business advisor keeps talking about, oh, they're going to make so much money, the Tates, because you know, when they get out of prison, they'll be able to claim, hey, we were exonerated. They'll just be so big and they'll make so much money. I'm like, sure, but they're compromising their legal defense all the time with these interviews, right? It doesn't help their legal defense. It makes it harder to prove their innocence. So these two guys from Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David and Adam Sosnick, they are not up for charges of rape and trafficking. They're not facing 15 to 20 years in a Romanian prison. They're just making out like bandits, basically. At the moment, look at the amount of views they get on the videos, how it builds their own brand by associating with the Tates, and it actually plays into the general content that's on their channel, and a lot of other things that the Tates are saying that are not related to the legal case. It's actually really interesting to look at. So definitely these guys are playing a blinder, promoting an alleged serial rapist, Andrew Tate, and human trafficker, Andrew and Tristan Tate. Morally questionable, but definitely from brand building, that's the way you do it, right? Right, so the Tates have not just been compromising their legal strategy, in my opinion. I actually really, from the beginning, haven't seen much of a coherent legal strategy. I don't even see lawyers representing them who seem to make sense a lot of the time in this legal case, but is human trafficking, organized crime, and rape in Romania. So a lot of the people we'll see been advocate also on Patrick Bet-David's channel, this PBD podcast. Like, he had a woman who was supposed to be representing the Tates. She couldn't even go in and meet the Tates in Romania because she isn't eligible, right? So she cannot help them with their case in Romania whatsoever, it seems, from my point of view. She may be a great lawyer in other ways, but not for the Tates. But again, really good for public relations and building the impression amongst the Tate base, or the Patrick Bet-David base, because they overlap a lot. Just promoting the fact that they must be innocent, it must be a human rights travesty what's happening to these guys. Don't think the Romanian court is going to agree, and we're going to get into this. So just as a pièce de résistance, let's look at how the Tates have been compromising their case even further, almost on, at this point, a daily basis, by advocating for the country and the leader who has attacked the country which I'm sitting in, and the city I'm sitting in. We actually had rocket attacks and air alarms in the last few days here in Odessa, in Ukraine. My own girlfriend narrowly missed being killed in a rocket attack that exploded like 500 meters from her when she was sleeping, blew up the canteen that she had had breakfast in that morning, also blew up the McDonald's. Yes, clearly military targets, you want to be blowing up McDonald's in Ukraine, but I digress slightly. Let's see what the Tates have to say about Vladimir Putin since this war has started. And the war started in 2014, but obviously it escalated quite dramatically on February 24th, 2022.
Give me it.
What is this? And the historical context and the law.
No. I didn't ask you about historical context or law or lines on a map. Give me that.
Because
I want it.
Because when I go to Ukraine, I've got a similar attitude.
So this clip, to be clear, was not made once they have been charged or they were being investigated in Romania. It was like right back at the beginning of the February 24th, 2022 Russian invasion. Here they're glorifying Vladimir Putin, who has attacked Ukraine unprovoked, And they are making this analogy basically with a rapist, from what I can see. Like, he just comes and takes what he wants, like Tristan Tate saying he did in Ukraine. Apparently, he's lying, because he didn't come and took what he wanted here at all. So it's a pretty poor analogy, or actually, compared to how badly the war has worked out so far for Russia, maybe it's actually a pretty apt analogy. Maybe he's actually a pretty bit of a clairvoyant Tristan Tate in this sense. But, like, that's terrible optics, right? To be making this comparison with someone who basically is saying, like, just come and take what I want and consent doesn't matter. I mean, that's the implication here. So pretty poor in hindsight. And they've continued in this vein. I'm not just taking one off-color comment or something that they've made. They've been photographed with Steven Seagal in Dubai. Steven Seagal, if you don't know, he's a famous film actor from before, but then he moved to Russia, became a Russian citizen, advocates just nonstop for Russia and attacking Ukraine, and he's pro this war and killing Ukrainians. So again, not a good look in terms of, you know, your current plight in a Romanian prison, that you went and did that before you got arrested. Let's put this in context, right? They are continuously, and this goes up just basically on a daily basis. Now that I don't even follow them, I think, on Twitter. I think it's just because I looked at their Twitter, I get fed their content by the algorithm all the time. They are in Romania. They are not just tourists there. They actually emigrated from the UK to Romania. Again, Andrew Tate said that it was to flee allegations of the sort that he's now obviously been indicted for in Romania. So what is Romania? Romania is a country in southeastern Europe that is a member of the European Union, NATO, and their main security concern is Russia, right? They are very clearly allied with Ukraine. That makes a lot of sense. Why? Because Romania has a very bad history with the Russian Empire as an adversary and the Soviet Union. They were basically at the end of World War II, and even up with World War II, they actually fought against the Soviet Union. They also had to make a lot of compromises with the Soviet Union. You know, that Russia is the successor state to the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union enforced communism here, so they associate that with Russians. So Romanians in general just have a complete aversion to most things Russian in general, and particularly a genocidal war against their neighbors. And here in Ukraine, there's actually a significant Romanian minority that are, you know, I left at the beginning of this invasion from Chernivtsi, for example, which is a city that used to be in Romania, still has a Romanian minority in the oblast. There are a lot of ethnic Romanians and Romanian citizens who fight in the Ukrainian army. On top of that, the country that was next on Vladimir Putin's hit list, I have a video about that, is the country of Moldova, a country to which Andrew Tate went to and referred to as White Africa. And by the way, when his entourage was here, and I joined them briefly in Odessa, they also referred to Odessites, or Odessans, people of Odessa, as white Africans as well. And this place is White Africa. I'm not really sure what they meant by it, but it didn't sound very complimentary. It sounded very condescending. So Moldova, the next country on Vladimir Putin's hit list, that's not a conspiracy theory. It is just basically geopolitical logic that he would have, if the Russian troops had gotten as far as the border, they met up with Transnistria, which is a region that Andrew Tate should be familiar with since he was detained there. It's like a de facto separatist enclave of Moldova that is pro-Russian. They would have simply taken control of Moldova very quickly. Moldova doesn't have much of an army, and potentially we would have seen the same atrocities committed against the Moldovans. Moldova is a majority ethnic Romanian country, and over 1 million Moldovans have Romanian passports. Now, this is even before we get to the territory of modern-day Romania. Then very clearly, if you're on trial in Romania, it's not going to win you any favors being pro-Russian and pro-Russian imperialism and Vladimir Putin. Now, is it? Right? Judges are supposed to be objective and just stick to the facts, but they are human beings. And they are not going to be very impressed. They're not going to be very impressed by his legal strategy so far anyways, and the rest of his content, but definitely supporting Russia. And whatever about the first few weeks of the war, maybe you could have given him a little bit of leeway, but we're almost on 500 days of this war, and he's still advocating for Russian imperialism and revanchism and genocide against Ukrainians, in effect, right, with the messages that they put out in their content, both on Twitter and in video. So again, this overlaps with the brand building and the monetization because there is a large segment of Andrew Tate's audience that is also pro-Russian fascism. And PBD, Valuetainment, they also lean towards supporting Russian narratives on the war. I just watched this morning, looked at their channel, and suddenly who comes but Colonel Douglas McGregor, the worst analyst of all time with respect to this war. The guy can't appear in mainstream media because he's just too embarrassing to have on. He's just wrong all the time. Beginning he was called saying Zelensky wasn't a hero, he's a coward or whatever because he wouldn't surrender in effect, paraphrasing a little bit. And he's been predicting the imminent collapse of the Ukrainian military since almost the first day of the war, and now we're up to day 500. And this morning he was again, I watched him on Patrick Bet-David, basically unopposed or unchallenged, rambling for over 2 hours. But again, look at the number of views that video will have gotten, way more than the average on Patrick Bet-David's channel. Why? Because there's an audience there. And actually a lot of the people who advocate for him in the public, at least in the US and maybe other parts of Europe, they are closely aligned with supporting Russian fascist narratives with respect to this war in Ukraine as well. So let me just show you a few examples of how bad, and this all relates to their legal case and actually to what my prediction is about it. This is actually pretty strongly correlated, and it doesn't seem maybe at first glance, you know, they're up for rape and human trafficking. Why, if they support Russia in the war, is it so relevant? So here's an example. Tristan Tate decided to chime in, and again, why are they on Twitter? Why are they commenting on the war when they are, again, they're in trouble in Romania? It's pretty clear what Romania's foreign policy is. It is against Russian fascism. So he decides to tweet under an account that's like one of these accounts that kind of like makes no sense to me why people follow it, but it spews out all this pro-Russian content. And he says the man on the right was winning when this photo was taken. So he's referring to Adolf Hitler, and it's this kind of comparison. Obviously, you see the text above it with Volodymyr Zelensky. He's comparing Volodymyr Zelensky with Adolf Hitler. Again, kind of a stupid comparison. Adolf Hitler invaded here, I guess, at the point when he was winning in Operation Barbarossa, committed genocide ultimately over several years. And Volodymyr Zelensky is the president of Ukraine and has obviously represented people defending against an attempted genocide, so he got that backwards. But he also says that the guy on the right was winning when the photo was taken. Again, that's part of the cope for those who support Russian fascism, is that they're winning, but you think after almost 500 days of their, maybe it wasn't supposed to be a 3-day war, but definitely 3-week, that they would have gotten the message that they're losing slowly but surely. But okay, distasteful. Again, is this advisable in the legal predicament that he finds himself in? Clearly not. And then he decides to go on because the obvious retort by someone, I guess, who was Ukrainian below, was human traffickers tend to struggle good from bad. And then he continues on because, of course, he can't keep his mouth shut or keep his fingers from his phone in this case. Real show of ignorance here. Really, Tristan Tate. Listen, no one's under the illusion, I think, that Tristan Tate is the brains of the Tate brothers versus Andrew. Saying Ukraine is losing is not a statement which implies which side is right or wrong. Why don't you ask who I think are the bad guys, right? And actually, the Ukrainians just ignored him. He didn't want to really care about who he thinks the bad guys are. And Tristan Tate just wants us all to know Ukraine are the bad guys, FYI, and then he gives us the middle finger. He gives everybody in Ukraine the middle finger. He basically gives everybody in the West the middle finger, everybody who's not in favor of committing genocide against your neighbors the middle finger. This is why I wore the t-shirt. I told you at the beginning I'd explain it, but it says that back in Ukrainian, and obviously we have the Moskva here, which was the Russian battleship, because metaphorically speaking, Andrew and Tristan Tate are also Russian battleships, and this battleship ended up sinking to the bottom of the Black Sea, just out in front of me here. So I think that's a nice analogy for how your legal case and your legal travails are going at the moment. Not just Tristan, but also Andrew Tate. So again, all this can be introduced as evidence. It all goes to character, right? And again, there's always a link between supporting this Russian fascism and this war against Ukrainians with his own legal problems, both of their legal problems, because what is Vladimir Putin indicted for himself by the International Criminal Court? It's for genocide under the Genocide Convention, but the article under which, in the subsection that he's been indicted under, is for trafficking. Why would you want to be seen to be supporting a political figure who's also accused of trafficking in a country that is petrified of Russia, or at least deeply concerned about Russia and its behavior? Again, this is like a clown show in terms of a legal strategy. And it gets worse. It almost gets worse every time I open Twitter, because now I get fed their ridiculous content. Then he decided to comment under another photo. I cut off the text above, but it was something about both soldiers being handsome and liking classical music, a reference to Wagner. Nazis, Adolf Hitler's favorite composer was Wagner, and also the Wagner Group, or this group of, I guess we can call them mercenaries, who just tried to mutiny in against the Russian state, basically, only the last weekend. But basically you have a comparison between what looks to me like a Wehrmacht, a German soldier in World War II on the left, and a Russian soldier on the right. I don't necessarily see that he's in Wagner, just maybe he's in regular soldier in the Russian army. It's hard for me to know, but you can tell by the two flags, the eras, and also the equipment that they have and the uniforms. And Tristan, the historian Tate, decides to chime in. Again, this guy is charged to this point with, yeah, they saved Europe, very insulting, and shows a lack of historical knowledge. Now, the day is that the Wehrmacht saved Europe because they lost the war and they committed genocide. Obviously, we had the Nuremberg trials after World War II. Then we have the current Russian soldier. So maybe he thinks that they're trying to save Europe. Save Europe from what exactly? By trying to commit another genocide. Very insulting. So he feels like, yeah, he feels it's insulting to compare the two. Shows a total lack of historical knowledge. So I guess he might have been trying to compare Soviet soldiers in World War II with the Wehrmacht. But again, that's not what's in the photo, you dummy. Again, he's in Romania. Do you think Romanians think that the Red Army was great in World War II? Well, they had to cede lands to the Soviet Union, and they were obviously on opposite sides of the war. And then they had communism, which was imposed by the Soviet Union, and obviously Russia is the successor state. And that was pretty unpopular as historical memory for Romanians. So again, just terrible analogy to go, and he just looks like an idiot. He can't even read the... Again, this is why lawyers tell you just don't do anything in social media if you're in this much trouble. But it gets worse, and I'm about to wrap it up before we come to a conclusion. But it's just like every day. I just want to show you how buffoonish this whole strategy is. Here we have this morning, or was it late last night, Andrew Tate again comes into my Twitter feed, and I don't know if he actually wrote this or a copywriter wrote this in order to build a brand, sell more products. But yeah, this is the tweet that I took a screenshot of. Andrew Tate, based on current life achievement, if we were living in feudal times, so a few hundred years ago at least, I would be a rich warlord. Andrew Tate would be a rich warlord with the spoils of endless bravery. And you would be a compliant peasant. Why would you be making a comparison between yourself and a warlord? What are warlords notorious for? Raping and pillaging. You are up on rape charges and trafficking charges and many other charges from what I can see. Why are your, I assume it's your copywriters, but they think it's a great thing. This is also just after we had the whole, Wagner, the head of Wagner is known as a warlord. So again, it's just like not great timing, but and then he's saying that they say anyone reading is a compliant peasant, and he's got for his bravery. Again, how is putting your girlfriends out on OnlyFans naked, you're probably doing other things to them as well for pornographic content, brave. Let's get to the real juicy stuff at the conclusion. Obviously, I've given you ample background about how I think their legal case is going at this point. It's basically buffoonish. This is not serious, and, but they are serious about building a brand and making money, clearly. Like, they're getting top marks for that, but not top marks in their legal defense, how they're positioning themselves. So let's first just close this out with just a reminder that the Tates have converted to Islam. That by itself shouldn't be that big an issue in a Romanian court, but when they were converting, Andrew Tate thought it'd be very good for his brand building, I assume, to go and insult Christians. And remember, he's an apostate, and so is his brother now, leaving the Romanian Orthodox Church for Islam. And Romania is also, by the way, the most religious country in Europe. So this is what he said.
My name is Abu Andrew now. I've decided that the West is finished It's done. It's over. I've said it a million times. There's nothing we can do to save it. Christians are complete pussies. Christians ain't done shit. Guess who else is a Christian? Will Smith. Adultery is in the Bible. You're not allowed to be adulterous. It says in the Bible to put her ass to death. And you won't even question her. You won't even raise your voice. I am now officially a Muslim. Watching that video, this is the first time I've watched it from start to finish. I've seen little clips on Twitter. I watched it from start to finish, and now I have ended up a Muslim. I'm a Muslim, and I hope you men at home are Muslim too. I'm gonna find myself a nice Islamic-ass wife. I'm gonna build up a big pile of rocks in case she gets fresh. I'm gonna be prepared, so I ain't gonna mess around. As soon as I catch her cheating, there's gonna be no delays. Inshallah.
So again, he's basically goading all Romanian Orthodox, basically all Christians, but definitely Romanian Orthodox Christians, that they are pussies, and he wants to go and stone women if they're adulterous. Again, this is catastrophic in front of the court, because this can all be introduced in some shape or form, or the judges open his Twitter and see what he's up to. So let's see how they reacted just after they were indicted to be charged.
A massive thank you to all the supporters we have around the world, regardless of what the mainstream media keeps saying and the lies they try and purport. We get tens of thousands of messages from people every single day supporting us, and they understand that we're not the first affluent, wealthy men who have been unfairly attacked. In our situation, unfortunately, it happens quite often. I want to thank the whole world for all the support we get. I also want to give a very special thanks to Romania and the Romanian people. The number of Romanian people who send me messages of support is absolutely fantastic. This is my home. I love this country. I'm going to stay here regardless, no matter what. And I look forward to being found innocent in the end of everything. So thank you all very much.
Look at Tristan Tate's face. This is the day after he was giving us all the middle finger here, thinking he was such a cool historian, supporting Vladimir Putin and the Russian army in their endeavors to commit genocide here. He looks like a scared little pussy himself, doesn't he? Yeah. And with good reason, as we're going to get to the outcome, the most likely outcome in this case. But there you have Andrew Tate. Well, now he loves the Romanian people. He sounds about as credible as if he had said that he was I mean, we all know he's pro-Putin and pro the Russian fascism. If he had said that he was pro-Hitler, which he hasn't, as far as I know, actually said, and then followed it up with, but I love the Jewish people, how credible do you think he'd sound? About as credible as he sounds here, because he's obviously anti-Romanian at the end of the day. They're both anti-Romanian, that's the bottom line. They're apostates from the Romanian Orthodox Church supporting a genocidal war that is obviously against Romania's interests, against the Romanian people. He's anti-Western, again, where is Romania? So this is, yeah, not going to go down well. Again, not credible. And let me just point out something. Say the Tates are convicted of all these charges, right? And there may be more charges afterwards in other jurisdictions, also in Romania. What do you think happens to convicted sex offenders in a prison in general? Now, I'm not advocating violence against anyone. We all know it's pretty unpleasant. There's this thing, honor amongst thieves. And they are basically seen not as the top G's, as these guys love to claim they are. They're going to be the bottom B's, right? So already it's going to be pretty rough. I know they're big guys and there's two of them, but putting it this way, what do you think happens to immigrant convicted sex offenders who are goading and taunting Romanian Orthodox Christians and are supporting a side that is committing genocide? Basically, they're anti-Romanian, right? What do you think happens to two convicted sex offenders who are like that in a Romanian prison?
I wish I could tell you that Andy fought the good fight and the sisters let him be. I wish I could tell you that, but prison is no fairy tale world.
If we look at the charges, the previous statements, the evidence that we are aware of, the Tate's reaction, which is basically they don't seem to have any coherent legal strategy. They almost seem to be almost helping the prosecution at this stage and focusing on brand building, making money. And they have these people around them who are, I would say, more interested in making money with them. And from what I can see, the chances of the Tates, if they contest, if they don't plead guilty and start to cooperate with the Romanian authorities at a certain point, they almost look certain. There's a preponderance of evidence, whether it'll be beyond a reasonable doubt for the Romanian court or whatever the test happens to be there. I would say that almost certainly they're going to be convicted if they don't reach some sort of like implicit or explicit agreement with the Romanian authorities. They may find a lot of money, maybe that they squirreled away into foreign bankers that might help. Also that money, that maybe up to 10 million euros or dollars that's been seized by Romanian authorities, maybe not really contesting, that might help their case. But basically, if they don't plead or reach some sort of an implicit or explicit agreement, and they risk going before the court, there's no jury. They're almost, I mean, a very good plea would be that they don't get convicted of any of the sex offenses, so the rape or the trafficking, right? If they just get the mafia and the organized crime and the other stuff, you know, they won't be sex offenders, right? But like, if I were the Romanian prosecution, I would say we have them basically on the trafficking already, almost certainly. So maybe the rape, yeah. And I wouldn't want to be them if they get sent to Romanian prison for any sort of length of time as convicted sex offenders. That's all I'm going to say on that. So I think that they'll either plead, they'll come to their senses and have some strategy. Maybe after the proceedings start and they see how they're going. Of course, you know, I'm not naive about a legal process. Obviously, I'm a former lawyer. Sometimes really bad people get off, and sometimes really innocent people get convicted. So there's obviously a chance of being acquitted, even if the chances look distinctly remote to me. Rape, on the other hand, that is a charge that is quite hard to prove in general, so maybe they have better odds than that just overall. That's going to be harder for the prosecution to prove. But I would expect them either to plead, or they will try to find some diplomatic or political solution, maybe with the next US elections, maybe, you know, maybe they just bank that the war is going to go in their favor and Russia will win and Western society will collapse in the meantime and they'll escape. Maybe he's hoping Vladimir Putin rides in his bear and releases them from prison in Bucharest or from house arrest. I don't know what's going on there. I wouldn't be betting my house on that, looking at how the war is going and how popular supporting Ukraine actually is amongst the US electorate. Not really seeing that being something that will save him. So anyways, my prediction is they are going down like the Moskva for a long, long time. So if you'd like to come to Eastern Europe for at least 3 months a year, maybe even move here permanently and enjoy the huge benefits of living in Eastern Europe, because it is not the way that Andrew Tate tried to describe it with his white Africa description, then you need the insider. That is one of the monikers I am known by my former clients here in Eastern Europe. And Desire Experience is your first step in enjoying a life full of freedom, something the Tates are not going to experience much of in the next couple of years, I feel. Lower taxes, better cost of living, and of course, superior dating options, because this region, Eastern Europe, is the region with the most beautiful women on average, in my opinion. I haven't traveled all over the world, but you need a plan. And the first step in that plan is the Czar Experience with me, Connor Klein. I'm also known as the Special Forces by my former clients as well. We center everything around a long weekend experience, get you introduced here, gonna party like a rock star, and living the high life, a VIP experience here in Eastern Europe. But as you may have gathered, with the Russo-Ukrainian war still ongoing while I'm making this video, I am not currently going with clients to Ukraine, Russia, or Belarus. Obviously here we are on the opposite side to the Tate brothers with respect to this war, and we are fully supporting the people of Ukraine to victory. But we have been going with my clients to some of the alternatives in the region in the interim, and they have not disappointed. We have been in Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, just up the road here. You can go to crazy Chisinau and have a fantastic time, as I have with many of my clients over the last year. Also been going to ridiculously hot Riga in Latvia, up in the Baltics, full of leggy blondes, tall leggy blondes, because that is what Latvia has. A lot of tall people, some of the tallest in the world, and highest percentage of blonde here in the world is also in the Baltics. On top of that, I'm going to Almaty, the Almighty, in southern Kazakhstan. Absolutely amazing city with beautiful nature nearby. Canyons, lakes, it's pretty spectacular as a place. I was actually recently just there with a client who's setting up a legitimate business, unlike the Tate brothers, allegedly. and he's actually opening an IT office there in Kazakhstan. Pretty phenomenal city, I have to say, Almaty. And lastly, we've been going to Warsaw, the capital of Poland, which has been transformed over the last few years, in large part because of this conflict, the Russo-Ukrainian war. So now you have a large number of Ukrainians, the cute Ukrainians, the beautiful Belarusians, and the pretty Poles all there together. And it is now the new capital city for me in the east of Europe. Just Poland's on and up all the time, economically and in terms of influence. So we go to those cities to see it's very, very hot here today in Odessa as I walk around. Beautiful weather in the evening. So the Zara experience is by application only. People need to be vetted, can't take everybody. You need to be obviously quite careful who you take on as a client in light of what we've been discussing today. There are some nefarious characters who want to come here to Eastern Europe. Not everybody is here just to enjoy a better standard of living. There are people trying to flee other things. So down below is an application form, and I would personally read through it. And if it's a good fit, then we'll be jumping on a strategy call together to discuss the possibility of you and me living the Zara experience here together in Eastern Europe. Now, before you go and fill out the application form, please go and look through some playlists, in particular if you're not so familiar with my content. First one I'm going to link up is the cities that I've been going to with my clients, either currently or before, give you a bit more of the flavor of the Zara experience. And then the second one is going to be a set of tutorials basically about dating the 9s and 10s, the super beautiful women here in Eastern Europe, the kind of women that Andrew and Tristan Tate were not successful with when they came here, apparently, considering the kind of content they made in their vlogs at the time. So don't be like those guys. Educate yourself a bit better and you'll have a lot more success, and hopefully avoid a few scammers who want to rob you, which they also, well, I guess in the end, they claimed they didn't get robbed, but anyways, they had that very unpleasant experience. And if you really want to dive deep in these things, I also have a playlist with my Vodka Vodcast series, which is like 50 hours of content, diving very deep into the mindset here in Eastern Europe, particularly in terms of dating. So go check out those first so you get a better idea of what the Zara experience and coming here to Eastern Europe really involves. And as Wayne Gretzky said, he was a Canadian ice hockey legend of Belarusian origin, quite appropriate for this channel to quote him, "You miss 100% of the shots you never take." So down below is the application form. And on that note, I bid you a very pleasant Odessa-style evening wherever you are, and Slava Ukraini, Heroям Slava, do Перемоги.
Zara Experience.